We are being hypnotized by people like this. Newsreaders, politicians, teachers, lecturers. We are in a country and in a world that is being run by unbelievably sick people. The chasm between what we're told is going on and what is really going on is absolutely incredible.
Oh yeah, dude. There's some Nephilim shit.
It's like we all know what's going down, but no one's saying shit what happened to the home of the brave. These motherfuckers, they're controlling us now, and no one's talking about how they made us modern day slaves. And everybody's just walking around, head in the clouds, and wanna wake up to a dead in the grave. But then it's too late, we need to be ready to raise up. Welcome to the end of days. Everybody is slaves, only some are aware that the government...
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Nephilim Death Squad. I am David Lee Corbo, a.k.a. The Raven. That is TOPLOBSTA, the father of disinformation. Before we get into today's episode, I'd just like to remind everybody that a great way to support this show, if you're looking to do so, is to go over to patreon.com/NephilimDeathSquad. Sign up at whatever tier you want, and you get a bunch of varying perks, discount codes off of merchandise from TOPLOBSTA.com, early access to episodes before they drop, ad-free viewing experiences, and more. A great way to support the show and a great community to be a part of. Also, don't forget to go to toplobsta.com because we now have our Dangerous Retards holsters. They are up on the front page of toplobsta.com. We're collaborating with Snappy Holsters to bring you guys a very cool product. For those of you that are conceal and carry holders, this might be something that you might want to get yourself. Look at it. It's beautiful, isn't it? Guys, today is Friday. And Fridays are for the Lord, so we are continuing with our Book of Revelation series, episode number 23, joined once again by Ed Mabrie. We keep taking too much time off in between these things, and I got to admit, I get to miss an Ed. I really do. I enjoy our conversations. We're 20 minutes late because every time we get together, we're just chatting it up. But Ed, if you could
what I need to start coming on earlier. I usually come on like right around the time we're supposed to start. I need to just come on, and so I apologize.
We do the same thing. We don't hop in until like it's like 5 minutes till the show starts, and then we sit in the chair.
So I'll come on a little earlier so we can get our chatting out of the way, so we can start on time. So people.
Yes, we'll need about an extra half an hour. Ed, let them know. Because you got some new things that you're cooking. I know you started your Patreon, so let's tell people where they can find you and where they can support you.
Right. So the main place to find me is, as you see here, facebyreason.net. That is where all my stuff is, generally speaking. But as you probably see at the top there, I've just started a Patreon. So I'm doing it for a couple reasons. Number one, it's a way for folks to support the show, and I appreciate the support. And for that, you know, you're not just giving me money for nothing. I want to give you guys some things in return. So if you are at the red tier, the tier 1, you get the information I put out, the content before anyone else. Like, for example, my Patreon, some people already signed up. They got the latest in the Genesis series last week, and I'm getting that before it even goes on my website or on YouTube. So it's going to be public in in another week, but Patreons get it first. They also get bonus content that I'm not releasing. There's one coming up next week that I already recorded. I'm going to put it up. And this is all about discernment, how to tell false prophets from people who actually have real prophetic information, because there's a ton of them out there in social media who are saying they got this word from God about what's going to happen in 2025 and all this kind of stuff. And so I'm giving you some rules to use to discern the real people from the false ones, and you know how to suss that out. So that's another. And I'll be doing bonus content regularly, and also I'm doing Q&As. So every week you sign up at this $5 tier, send me your questions, and every week I will do a video where I answer your questions. So that's what you get. So you get all that for the low price of $5. If you want to jump up a tier, in addition to everything you get in the first tier, you also get to be a part of the Bible study that we do every month. I've talked about this a few times, and people have really been interested in it because it's something that I've been doing with a private group. We've been doing it for like 5 years, refining it, and now I'm ready to let the more people see it, because it was a group. It was like my private church, not my private church, but it was a church service that I did with a group of people, with a group of friends. And now we think we have it to the point where we're ready to let other people join. And the special thing about it is that we go through the entire Bible in 1 year. but we do it from the spiritual standpoint. We focus on the spiritual realm, not on the terrestrial realm, because if you aren't looking into the supernatural world, you're missing at least 80% of what's going on in the Bible. And that's why a lot of people don't get why God does what he does, what his will is, because you're looking at it from the point of view that this is our story. It's not our story. It's God's story. The other thing we do is we read the Bible as if we've never read it before. We get rid of all of our preconceived notions of what you were taught about God, or your opinions, your prejudices about whatever. And we just read it like we're reading it for the first time. And we read it in chronological order, because the way the books of the Bible are laid out in our canon is not in chronological order. Like the book of Job, for example, is in the middle of the Old Testament, but it actually occurs during the Genesis narrative. And we'll be covering that during the Genesis series.
Ed, are you starting over fresh? Because you said you get to the point where you're willing to. Okay, you are starting fresh. Honestly, yes. I might join you because
we do it. Every year we start from we go from February to January. So actually, this Sunday I'm doing the last one with my current group. We're wrapping up Revelation. This coming Sunday. And then we're going to start all over again in February. And that's when everyone can come aboard. February 16th.
I'm totally joining because I've been looking for a good Bible study. There was a time where like I wanted to try, but I don't know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I want to be with a group. I'd rather have somebody else read it and then we can kind of go over it together. So that's great. I'm 100% going to be there. I've been thinking about this for a couple of weeks now, your Bible study. And it's good to know that you're starting February.
You started.
Yeah, love to have you guys. Go ahead, Top.
No, David had like a little Bible series on NephilimDeathSquad. He got maybe 2 episodes in. He struggled with a lot of the words. If they were more than like 7 letters,
yeah, it was really that. Anything under 6 letters. Under 6 letters is okay. 6 letters, I kind of can get it sometimes. 7 letters is simply no hope. And it turns out a lot of 7 and above letters in the Bible.
There are those, and so in addition to the way the Bible study is laid out, it's an hour. 1/2 hour is just me doing an overview of the subject matter. Then the next half hour or more if we go that way, but I cap it at if people can leave after the next half hour, but that's more of discussion, Q&A. You have questions, you want to talk about some things weren't clear, we go through that, and if it goes longer, it goes longer, but
very cool.
It's that hour.
And the first one is the 6th. You said February 16th.
16th, yeah, the third, I think that's the third Sunday, and it's at 10 a.m. Pacific time, so make sure you're I know a lot of people around the country, and that's the earliest I actually want to do it. So
wait, what time is it?
So that'll be what
you said 10 p.m.
right now
Pacific, right?
10 a.m.
10 a.m. Pacific. Okay,
so that's
right
now for you.
Yeah,
that's not bad. Yeah, I could do that. That's great. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm excited.
And you get access to the tools that we have, some resources that have everything laid out, so you can read through it. And there are different levels. If you just want to read everything, you can read the whole Bible, or you can read the highlights. And there's also video highlights, and there's summaries. So if you want to take just like the easiest path, if you don't have a lot of time, you can just read the summary, the subject summaries and the videos, and you're good. If you want to dive in and go verse by verse, you can do that too. And that's all laid out on the first page. Very cool. Once you sign up for it, you get access to that tool, those resources, and then once a month, I give you my overview and summary. We talk it through, and then we go into the next month, and we do it. And every year, I get new insights from God about stuff, and so it's always going to be new. So I would suggest just keep. It's still different every year, and people have told me that it's changed their lives. It's changed the relationship with God.
I hope all the dangerous retards in the audience. Look, man, it would be really cool to go and be a part of this together. Xerox, thank you for the $1 donation. I thought this was Timeline Cleanse. Who are these other guys? No, not Timeline Cleanse. Dramatically different show. But yeah, I hope that ideally I would love to show up and bring a bunch of the gang with me. So hopefully we could do that. I'll be subbing to the Patreon and looking forward to that, man.
If you guys are here, if you're here right now, this is 10:30 a.m. your time, right?
Yeah.
So you could make it. You can make
it. It'll be the same time on every third Sunday, and you get weekly notes. So you get a bunch of stuff. So you'll be very prepared for what's going on. And so I know it's a lot to get through the Bible in. Thank you. I know it's a lot to get through the Bible in 1 year. So obviously we can't get into every nook and cranny, but you can through the resource. But I'm giving overview of the big points that are going to really help you understand what God's story is and what he wants from us. And that's the huge thing.
I love that. That's great, man. I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to that. So, all right, let's get into where are we going today, Ed?
we are nearing the end. We're almost at the end, but we're at the good stuff. We are, all the bad stuff's out of the way, the judgments and hell and everything. And so last time we talked about what heaven, the myths about heaven / New Jerusalem, and what it is, what it isn't, what we're going to be, some of the stuff we're going to be doing there. And now we are actually going to go into chapter 21 of Revelation, and we're going to look at the physical description of the New Jerusalem and why it's laid out the way it is. And we'll see if we have time to get into some of the stuff we'll be doing while we're there. And my wild theory, if we don't get it this time, we'll get it next week, which I'm okay with that because I want to keep stretching this out. I don't want this to end.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were talking before the show. There's other stuff on the horizon that we could be doing, but this is just one of my favorite things that we put out to the world, and so also not looking forward to it ending, but still looking forward to the information. So let's go.
So if you want to pull up, I don't know, Top, if you want to pull it up, or I can go to Bible Gateway because I didn't have it up.
Yeah, I got it up.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'm probably just gonna, instead of reading it all, I'm gonna read a chunk of it, then kind of talk about what's going on here. I think it might be the best way instead of just giving a big reading download. Okay, and I saw this is chapter 21. So this is chronologically in this in this point of Revelation. This is the Great White Throne Judgment, where all the people who rejected God's provision have been judged, and they're eternally separated. We talked about that a couple episodes ago. So here we go. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth have passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, "Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them and be their God. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, sorrow, or crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. And he has sat on the throne and said, Behold, I make all things new. And he said to me, Write, these words are true and faithful. And he said to me, It is done. I'm the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give it to them who is athirst, fountains of water freely." Let's just talk about that. If you want to scroll back up. So he sees a new heaven and a new earth. So that means that the old heaven, old earth passed away. We saw at the beginning of the Great White Throne Judgment, it said that when God began his final judgment, he said that the earth and heavens before the face of God, they fled away, and there was no room left for them. So that means that this earth that we're on, the heavens, and in this case, the heavens don't mean the spiritual realm. It means the sky and space. If you believe in space, I'm not going to get to the flat Earth stuff here. There'll be another flat Earth reference that I'm going to make again later. Again, I'm ambivalent about flat Earth, but if you believe in it, cool. If you don't, it's fine. But this earth, this realm is going to pass away. We also see in the book of Peter, I think it's 2 Peter. Peter talks about how a fire is going to consume everything. Everything is going to melt away. All the elements are going to melt away. So everything is going to be gone. This is controversial for some reason. I don't understand why people have a problem with it, but there are some people who you will see who are Christians who will debate whether or not this is the earth and heavens being destroyed or if they're just replenished. Because
it's interesting that they say there's no more sea. I wonder what your thoughts on that, Ed. Is that like?
I'm going to get to that in just a sec. Yeah. I'm going to catch up to you, Dave. Okay. So, because there are verses that said heaven and earth will never pass away. Well, what that means is the heavens and the earth. You have to look at it in the sense of what God said in Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. What he said by that, that doesn't just mean the physical planet or plane or whatever we live on. Earth, the word erat means material realm. The heavens is the spiritual realm. Earth, or arats, is the material realm. So in that sense, when he says the heavens and earth will never pass away, that means there will always be forever. There will always be a spiritual and a physical realm, not necessarily this particular land that we're on. So yeah, it's going to go away, and there's a reason, and we're going to see that when we get to some other verses, we're going to see that it's going to be absolutely necessary for there to be a new earth. So getting to what you were saying, David, about there's no more sea. That means there's going to be no more oceans. There'll still be water. I mean, we saw a few verses down that there's going to be fountains of water. So I think there'll still be rivers and lakes and things like that, but there won't be any more sea. Why? Well, on the original earth, that we'll be talking about in the Genesis series I'm doing, there weren't any oceans. There was no Pacific or Atlantic oceans.
Yeah, that's
There
crazy.
weren't.
My mind was kind of going there when it's talking about the Earth being formless.
Yeah, well, that's part of it. But when he recreated it, when Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, there weren't any. There were no oceans. There weren't oceans until after the flood.
Wow.
Yeah, there weren't. So that means there was a huge amount of land that human beings could occupy. So obviously we have a considerably less on our current Earth. But and actually, Lucas, you're right. There is a reason why the oceans are considered evil, because that is where certain spiritual entities who fell were imprisoned. They're imprisoned in the sea. The
Makes
sea is
sense
always
with the UFOs coming out of the ocean. This kind of
Isn't
thing,
Leviathan?
Yeah,
a
Leviathan,
sea-dwelling?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Leviathan is imprisoned in the sea. We're going to talk about Leviathan when we get to Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, because there's some interesting stuff there that unless you understand the Hebrew and some Ugaritic references, there's actually an image there in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2 of God slaying a water dragon, the Leviathan, or Tiamat.
Sorry, I did not know that. Wait, and the earth was formed without void, and darkness upon the face of the deep.
The word deep is the word tiom.
Get the hell out of here.
And that
That's
tiom
cool.
can actually be, if you go to the Ugaritic text, it's the word Tiamat. Tiamat was a seven-headed dragon in ancient Ugaritic legends. So that's a whole other thing that I'll save for the Genesis series. We'll talk about it maybe in a few weeks. But it says the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. The word waters is the word miasma, which means chaos. So waters, seas represents chaos. So there was some type of rebellion early on. I'm getting way too deep into the Genesis. There was some type of rebellion early on that I'll detail in my Genesis series. And this chaos dragon, this Leviathan, this Tiamat, was defeated, and the Spirit of God is standing over him in a position of beating him. Like God just kicked this dragon's ass, and now he has to recreate the earth. So enough of Genesis. Let's get back to Revelation.
No, but I was going to say, when they refer to the ocean, they refer to it in the feminine, and the feminine is usually correlated with chaos, whereas the masculine would be correlated with order. So makes sense.
Exactly. So there's no more sea, and the reason, and again, that's because there's no need for that. There's no more chaos, and there's no more need to use that to imprison any fallen entities, because there won't be any. And what that also means, again, is that this new earth will have a ton more land space. Now, our current earth has... Yeah, go ahead.
So like no more salt water, because there's really no reason for brackish water, right?
No,
it's like...
No, it doesn't do any good for anyone. You can't drink it. It's, if you drink it, you're going to throw up, or you're going to poop out the other end.
Perhaps
I got to say, Top, that was like a really good point, by the way. The whole so these things are imprisoned under the oceans, and Top is like, yeah, that's where the UFOs are coming out of, right?
Yeah.
And it's like,
is it possible to, like, now again, we're going to
Go ahead,
derail
go.
you. You got one verse in, barely. Is it possible that the reason the water would need to be brackish or like salt water, would that maybe because like water would be some kind of a conduit that, I mean, doesn't don't spiritual entities use water in some sort of way? But I wonder if it's like if it has saline in it, I mean, if it has salt in it, would that change the composition of it in order to trap something or to mess this up?
Salt water is considered dead water. Living water is fresh water. What do you have over in Israel right now? That was even the Dead Sea during the time of Jesus. Although during the time of the patriarchs up until now, you have the Dead Sea. Why is it called that? Because it's the more salt, the less life can be there. Interestingly, the Dead Sea is starting to become less salinated, and you're starting to see fish in there, and that's actually a prophecy that in the end times the Dead Sea will actually start to come to life. That's a whole other thing. But there's some videos you can go to YouTube, and you'll find this. It's a lady who does a really good job of showing that in certain areas of the Dead Sea, fish are coming back. So
look, I know this is going to be totally schizo, but yeah, there is like an association with running water, fresh running water, and portals. And I think it's worth noting that, like, within ceremony, when you're a ritual, when you're calling on some demonic entity, you entrap them with what? Salt.
Yeah.
That's how you do it. You provide, or you prevent them from crossing barriers, crossing portals. You put it in a doorway to keep it from entering through that
Or-
portal. If they're trapped beneath an entire body of salt water, maybe there is like an alchemical sort of a reason why salt is significant.
Well,
back
salt
in the day-
on our purely physical realm, sodium is it's they're electrolytes. They conduct electricity. Salt, potassium, that we call them electrolytes for a reason. I mean, that's because they help our bodies are electric, and having the right amount of electrolytes help those functions. Like when your muscles contract, obviously there's electricity going through that, and so and if you don't have enough electrolytes, you're going to get cramps because your muscles can't function correctly. So salt is an electrolyte. It conducts a form of electric power, so that could be part of it as well.
Like
What does Jesus call us? The salt of the earth.
Right.
Man,
like when back in the day when I burned down David's ancestors' homestead, I salted the land after, so they can't grow anything.
So nothing can grow. Right. That's interesting. That's interesting. There feels like there's something there, and unfortunately, between
Are you
Top and I,
saying
we're just
that we could use Gatorade interchangeably with holy water? Is that what you're
Yes.
saying?
We can try. You'll quench the demon's thirst, and
oh my god.
and if they use that, what's in there? What that thing that red dye 5 that was just banned? Maybe that'll
that probably is. I mean, that's to kill
cancer.
people. I don't know if it kills spirits. Definitely kills people.
Yeah,
makes us extra retarded.
Yeah. So there's no more sea. So in addition to there not being a place to imprison these entities, because there's no need for it to imprison them. Again, it also means it's going to be a massive amount of land. And I mean, even today, in our current Earth, there's massive amounts of land. That's why overpopulation, that's such a crock.
Yeah.
I mean, but I mean, imagine if the oceans weren't here right now, imagine how much land we'd have. But now this new Earth is going to be bigger, and I'll show why in a few verses. But the new Earth is going to be bigger than the old Earth. It has to be, and so there's going to be a ton of room. So we don't have to worry in the new Earth about overcrowding.
That sounds nice. So you mean to tell me there's not going to be there's no cities in Newark? There's no Newark, New Jersey, or anything like that. I'm really looking forward to that.
I think there's going to be, again, I don't know this. This is total speculation. I think the New Jerusalem will be the only organized city. I think the rest is going to be the way God originally intended for us. And there'll be homes there. You can build a domicile, but I don't think we'll be organized into these cities. Like, I live near San Francisco. My family's down in LA. It's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be concentrated like that, because nothing good ever happens in cities. You look in the Bible, aside from the New Jerusalem, cities are always bad. I mean, when you get too many people together in one space, because I don't think we're ever meant to be concentrated like that. I think we were meant to have a large plot of land that we call our own, that we can make our own and use our own uniqueness. And you can visit other people's land, but I don't think we're ever meant to be crowded into these tiny areas.
Certainly not stacked on top of each other, vertically.
We were talking about I don't know if it was us, but we were talking about Adam and his commission that God said, now go and be fruitful, multiply, and basically blanket the earth. So if human beings are this weird source of electricity and spirituality or whatever the hell we are, and we're all around the earth coating it, think about this kind of weird grid, right?
No, I prefer all across the earth.
All across, okay.
Yeah,
whatever we want to say.
This, not like this, but like this.
Like a blanket. Either way, we can't get off of it. What happens when you concentrate too much in one area, and that's glowing blue, or there's not in any area. You'll get an area like a desert, which are usually haunted, there's nothing there. There's no electricity, no spark of God. So it's it would make sense that we're supposed to spread out equally among the earth and kind of do our thing.
Yes, he commanded Adam and Eve, and then that's what he commanded after Babel. I mean, after Noah, he said, go out, and they didn't do it. They concentrated in Babel. And obviously that made God angry enough to say, okay, I'm going to have to confuse your languages, because you're not going to do it on your own. So if you have to make it so that you don't understand these people next to you, so you have to spread out and with the people whose language you do understand, because we want to congregate, and God wants us to spread out. And so all right, so now we get to verse 2. And he saw the New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. So obviously, you see, John is talking about the beauty of the city. We're going to see it described a few verses down. But what's interesting is that my old mentor, Chuck Missler, would emphasize that it says that New Jerusalem's coming down from heaven, but it never says it lands. So he speculates that the New Jerusalem might be a floating city. Interesting. I don't think he's correct. He could be, but I don't think he's correct on that, because when we get down to the description a little later, you're going to see it has foundations. And I don't think there's a point in having a foundation stone for a city if it's floating in the air. But I could be wrong too, and Chuck could be right. And maybe it is floating in the air, but that will be interesting if it is. But yeah, my opinion is that it comes down and actually lands on the new earth. But if it's floating, that just adds a lot of, different color to what it's going to be like.
It would provide a strange veracity to the inner earth theory or hollow earth theory if you've got a New Jerusalem that just kind of goes over or around. It would make sense for it being much larger if it had to go around or over, because it's got to cover that surface area. But then what happens to the bottom part? It's just there.
That's where I struggle with it being a floating city, because again, the foundations are meant to be, again, to anchor something to the ground. So, well, it's not a big deal, but it's just something that, if someone has a different opinion, I'm cool.
But it definitely goes over. I think
yes.
My question is, how much space is in between? If this is over, that part, the original Earth then stays. It stays there, round or flat or whatever it is, and this thing is on it, either flat on it or there's space. Because if there's space, that would imply you could do something there. You could be on there still. I don't know.
I don't think you'd want to live there. You'd be void of sunlight for a long time.
Yeah, and you'd be like, "Is this thing ever going to fall on me?"
Yeah, I don't think so.
But yeah, I don't think so. It's an intriguing thought, but I think it's going to be physically anchored to the earth. And then so verse 3 basically says that God will be with men. This gets back to what I talked about last time, and the whole purpose of the eternity is that it's going to be Eden again. What was Eden like? Eden was God dwelling with man. That's what God will get what he wants. What he wanted in the beginning was to dwell with man. He told Adam and Eve, during the day, rule the earth, spread out, command everything. You're in my image, you bear my image, creation will obey you. Then in the cool of the day, let's walk and talk. Let's hang out. Tell me your stories. That's what God has always wanted. And now he's getting it. And so the tabernacle of God, and the tabernacle doesn't necessarily, exactly. Yeah, the salt of the earth. The tabernacle doesn't necessarily mean a physical building, although the New Jerusalem will be the quote unquote tabernacle. But to tabernacle with someone just means you're going to dwell with them. Like if you have a house guest, your house guest is tabernacling with you. He's coming in and he's hanging out with you. And so God will individually hang out with us because he's omnipresent. That's how he can talk to all of us at the same time. I think God is with us right now, listening to what we're saying. And he's also answering, listening to someone's prayers in Sri Lanka. And he's also, healing someone in, somewhere in wherever, in Romania or whatever. So he's omnipresent. So that means that he will tabernacle with us. We'll be hanging out with him. The next verse says that he will wipe all the tears from our eyes. And we talked about this last time. Why would there be tears? There'll be no more death, obviously. There'll be no more sorrow or crying. Neither will be any more pain, for all the former things that passed away. And so again, it says, so we can move on to verse 5. He says, behold, I make all things new, and write these words are true and faithful, and I'm the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, and I will give all of them who are thirst a fountain of the water of life. And I was wrong. He didn't say the wiping away that. Yeah, you gushed up, wipe away all the tears from your eyes. Why would there be tears? We talked about this last time. I think there's two reasons. One, I think there's going to be tears for the people who we love who aren't going to be there.
Right.
But I think those tears are going to be wiped away and comforted immediately. And after death, there's going to be no more sorrows. He's going to wipe away your tears, meaning he is going to comfort you and just let you know that this is just, it's what it is. You're sad that your loved one, maybe friends, maybe family. I mean, I have family who have passed away who I know they weren't believers. And that makes me sad now. It's going to be even sadder when I know that they're not going to be there. I have friends now who I won't say I've given up on them, but and I still work on, but I know that they have made it up in their mind that, I'm just not going to be a part of this. I'm not going to be a part of Christianity, and it's going to be sad for initially.
Let me ask. So this is kind of crazy, and it's outside of the thought of like traditional Christian thought. But I was talking with my parents about this idea. Like we were looking at the Hebrew translation of the word eternity, and that word said the definition of it was something to the effect of like an indescribable amount of time, or like an undeterminable, like it's just so vast that we don't even know how to measure it. And so I was thinking about that, and when it says like, you'll be in heaven for eternity with God if you're a believer, that implies that other people would be in hell or Sheol, or not Sheol, but another place that is not with God for an eternity,
Yeah.
But that's like, it just means it's an indeterminable amount of time, but it is an amount of time. So
it is. So it's not, and this is really tough for us because with physical time, which I talked about in the Revelation. I'm sorry, in the Genesis one that's out for my Patreons now, and it'll be dropping on my free feeds next week. We talk about what time is. There's physical time, and that's a time we are bound by, and where we can't move back and forth through the time. It only goes in one direction, and we're bound by it. Now, time is a measurement of a sequence of events. So will there be time in eternity? Well, there has to be, because things are going to happen after the other. But I think we're going to experience time in a different way. And again, it's tough to describe. The best way I can describe it of eternity is a constant present. We're always in the present. We're not saying, hey, you know what I'm going to do next week? No, you're already doing it. It's like a story. That was when we went over Revelation chapter 12. And because I think that's a kind of a insight into how God sees time or experiences time. And because you have the story of the woman clothed in the sun with the moon under her feet and 12 stars, she's giving birth to a man child who's caught up to heaven, another dragon trying to devour the child at the same time, and his tail is drawing a third of the stars of earth. The woman is Israel, the man child who she's pregnant with and giving birth to is Jesus, and the dragon is obviously Satan. But it's all happening at once, and that's like 5,000 years of history of this all happening at once. Israel. Right. Jesus coming, ascending to heaven, dragon trying to devour him or stop Jesus' return, the stars being cast down from heaven. That's all. It's a sequence of events, but God is seeing it all at the same time. It's the way we see a story. We talked about it before. You think about your favorite movie. You can see the sequence of it, but you see it all at the same time. So that's the closest equivalent. It's a clumsy equivalent because we can't wrap our minds around it, but that's the closest equivalent I can give you to what eternity is going to be like. It's going to be happened, and is happen, and will happen all at the same time. It's really weird, but again, we're going to be existing in such a higher dimensional plane. It can't make sense to us now in our 4-dimensional world, but if we're in 11 dimensions, I think then it can theoretically make more sense.
And I don't want to get too caught up on this, but I was kind of like arguing the point with my parents more about the people that do go to this other place.
Okay.
And they're there for an eternity. I was like, if it's an indescribable amount of time, it's an amount of time. So if it's an amount of time, it's an amount of time. That means that it ends, that it stops at some point. Like, is there another time for them to then be able to like try again? That's like, it's a crazy idea, but if that's what that word means, and that means that it does imply that there would be an amount of time for these people who were lost at some point. Maybe that's why he wipes the tears from your eyes. Like, hey, they get a second shot. Don't worry about it. I don't have no idea.
The short answer is
surprised if the way that they like, so, and this is going to be a really sloppy analogy, but it seems like it's the best that we could do in this case because we're 3-dimensional entities. But like in Dragon Ball Z, there's a hyperbolic time chamber, and it's just a place where you go where time happens differently. So the people on the outside experience these folks being gone in this chamber for an hour, but the people that are inside the chamber are gone for years. Mm-hmm. And so, I just wonder if it's one of those things where it's like, if you are relegated to the time that we're in now and you go to a place of suffering, well, then you experience time in this way, but we might be sitting on the outside. This is like the idea of God wiping away your tears. We might be looking at that and being like, well, they're going to be out any second now, so it's not that bad, but so they are experiencing this.
Torture.
Yeah, they're experiencing thousands of years of basically distance from God and left to come to terms with the fact that they belong there, that they have, sinned and they haven't, seeked out redemption. Yeah, Mr. Popo's torture chamber. That's a much better way of describing it. So I just wonder if maybe that's what the nature of it is. Like, let's say we get whisked out and we are now extra dimensional entities, but they are not. So they're still here in this drudgery, going through this suffering, feeling alone. But in the grand scheme of things, they're already there. And they're also simultaneously suffering. You know what I mean? Like, time would be really
or maybe,
confusing in that
maybe
way.
it's the other way around. Maybe that's the mercy. Maybe the mercy is that we experience 10,000 years, and for them it's only like a day. So they're only suffering for a day while we're enjoying pleasure and joy for 10,000 years. I don't know. The short answer is I don't know, and the Bible isn't clear on it. There are theories, and when I get to my crazy theory next week, maybe because I have a thought again, and I want to preface this before next week. This is not based. This is very, very likely based on the Bible. This is going to be my conjecture. So don't say you blasphemer. No, I'm not. I'm just
oftentimes, Ed,
Very,
your
very well.
conjecture is a lot of fun, and it's
Right.
very
Oh, it's
compelling.
We're allowed to think here, you know.
You're allowed to
Yes,
think.
yes.
I welcome it, and that's the kind of stuff that you'll probably get on the Patreon. When I'll feel more free to give like my really wacky theories, but I want to kind of stick to verse by verse stuff on the free feed, but not get to my other stuff commentary on the Patreon that might even get me banned off of YouTube because I already have two strikes against me.
I just
So-
want to remind everybody that when the
What are
16th
you getting
rolls
strikes
around,
for? Ed?
What-
for
yeah, what do you
stupid
get-
stuff, man. I got a strike because the first time I got a strike, but it were both the same reason. I got a strike because I very lightly compared the COVID injections to the mark of the beast. Because what I didn't say they were not the mark of the beast, but what I said was, my theory is that it's going to change that the mark of the beast will change your DNA. And what I basically said is that the injections show that we have the technology already to affect your DNA. And when I
You know
said
what,
that,
Ed?
and they
I'm
said it's
gonna
medical
argue.
misinformation, and I got a strike, and I was banned.
I'm going to argue with you, Ed. How dare you go against science right now? Because it's clear that that's misinformation, and we're here
and
to
I
clear
don't know
that
if you
up.
know this, Ed, but going against
YouTube
science
censors.
is going against Fauci.
I am anti. Yeah, I went anti-science. I you got to believe the science, trust the science. Just believe.
Believe, yes.
Well,
Don't
us
ask
here at
questions,
Nephilim,
just believe.
at NephilimDeathSquad, we obey, submit, and comply to the science. So I want the YouTube censors to know that. How
Shout
dare
out to
you, Ed?
Pfizer and Moderna, by the way, some of my favorite companies.
I've learned my lesson. I will never ever question the science again. The science is
Please.
right.
Please
I
have
will
mercy
never.
on us. But before we go on, I just want to remind everybody that's listening now, because it's grown since the beginning of the show. I'm going to be in this Bible study. Patreon.com/faith by reason. I highly recommend to the dangerous retards listening, sign up, and then we can hang out and we can do Bible studies together on the 16th of February. I'm really looking forward to that.
It is growing. Okay. Very nice. Very nice.
There you go.
Yeah, it's going. I mean, yeah, it's on. This is the first time I've talked about it on this show, but I think just people who were expecting it. I mentioned briefly that I was going to do one, and folks have already come aboard. And I did a quick video on my YouTube channel for it and on my faithbyreason.net. But yeah, come aboard. I mean, I'd love to have you. And yeah, you're going to get some good information.
I'm excited.
So okay, where do we go? So great. So yeah, so behold, I make all things new, and so this is just John. What you're going to see throughout this is the Apostle John is just overwhelmed. So he keeps repeating himself, which I understand. He's a teacher like me, and we tend to repeat ourselves, and we really want you to understand it. So John is just overwhelmed. So let's go to verse 7. Yeah, he overcomes to inherit all things. I will be his God. He will be my son. A good, beautiful overview statement. But the fearful, unbelieving, abominable, whoremongers, sorcerers, idolaters, and lawyers will have their place in the second death, the lake of fire. So he's saying there's not going to be any evil there. Then this is interesting. Verse 9, there came to me one of the 7 angels, which had the 7 vials or bowls of the 7 last plagues, the bowls of wrath, and talked to me, saying, come here, and I will show you the bride, the Lamb's wife. And he carried me away in the spirit to a great and high mountain, and showed me the great city, the holy Jerusalem, again, descending from God. So I want to talk about these 2 verses before we get to the description. So first of all, we know that, again, there's not going to be any evil in New Jerusalem. Verse 8 makes that pretty clear. Verse 9, the angel who talks to John happens to be one of the angels that poured out one of the bowls of wrath where God judged all the evil in the world. Why would God choose this angel to talk to John? I think it's my opinion is that he's trying to say that the same God who judges is also the same God who rewards. The same God who has no tolerance for evil is also the same God who's going to bring you eternal joy. Because people have this idea that, God the Father, Jehovah, Yahweh is like the vengeful one, and Jesus is the sweet, nice guy. And honestly, it's more the other way around. I think that the God of the Bible, the Father God, is more tolerant than Jesus. If you read the way Jesus behaved in the Gospels, he was he was impatient. He called his disciples stupid. He said, "You guys are slow of learning. How long am I going to be with you? You idiots don't get it." Jesus was hardcore. He's the one who beat people out of the temple when they were the money changers. He made a whip. He went in there and just kicked the crap out of them and overturned their tables. That's the idea we have of Jesus, of this, hippie and with long hair and white robe saying peace and love, brother. No, that's not who Jesus really was. Jesus was fierce.
Does it say that he made the whip?
Yes, he took cord. It says
Okay.
literally he took rope and tied knots into it.
That's a lot different than finding one and then being like, hold on a second.
He said, "I'm going to make sure that I got the whipping stick." So
I just in my mind, it's like Jesus tying knots in a rope, like muttering shit.
I'm about to
whip your ass.
I'm coming, baby. I'm coming. Go ahead. Let me see you keep that energy when I show up, like that kind of shit.
Exactly.
That's very okay. All
But
right.
yeah, so that's a whole other thing. Like I think I might do a Jesus study after Genesis. We'll see what happens.
Now that I live amongst
lenient.
them.
Yeah. He said, "Dad has mercy. Me, you got 5 minutes of mercy." I'm coming with a rope. You got to finish tying this rope to get the money changed out the temple.
Get your Jesus whips at toplobsta.com.
Dude, you got to do it.
Oh my God. Coming soon, guys. Coming soon.
All right. So, all right. So he takes, so this angel, the angel who had the wrath, is the same one who's going to show him the New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven. So let's go to verse 11. They said he had the glory of God. Her light was like a stone most precious, even like a jasper stone, clear as crystal, and had a wall great and high, and had 12 gates, and the gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and written thereon were the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. So it has 12 gates, and each gate has one of the tribes of Israel written on it. 3 gates on the east, north, south, and west. And on the wall of the city, had 12 foundations, and on them were the 12 apostles of the Lamb. And he talked to me, and he who talked to me had a golden reed, measured the city and the gates thereof and the walls thereof. So he's measuring the city. And the city lies 4 square, and the length is as tall as it is, as long as it is high. And he measures the city with a reed, 12,000 furlong, the length and the breadth and the height are all equal. And he measured the wall 344 cubits according to the measure of a man, and that is of an angel, of a messenger. And the building of the wall was of jasper. The city was of pure gold, like the clear glass. The foundations of the city were garnished with all manner of precious stones. I'm going to mess up some of these pronunciations. Some of them let me start. Oh yeah, the foundation was jasper. The second was sapphire. The third chalcedony. The fourth emerald. The fifth sardonyx. The sixth sardis. The seventh chrysolite. The eighth beryl. The ninth topaz. The 10th screw that. The 11th.
You know what's interesting about this, Ed? Though
12th,
it's we talked to a guy named Justin Brown of the Promethean Lens podcast, and he talks about this coat of many colors that Joseph had, and he makes an argument, a pretty compelling one, that it was actually the priestly robes stripped off the Nakash in the garden, and that robe seemingly was adorned with all of these various gemstones itself. And I just wonder if there's something that we don't understand, because I do kind of think that there's room for like alchemy. Like there is room to sort of manipulate the foundational elements of this realm that we live in. And I think that is probably what gives abilities to some of these more magical artifacts throughout history, right? Like the idea of the Ark of the Covenant. Like there's something in its makeup, the way that it was created, that allows it to do these things. And I just find it interesting that, whenever the Bible mentions something now, I'm like, that's on purpose, right? When the Bible goes like Esau was hairy, I'm like, well, he must have been pretty hairy then for the Bible to be like, no, dog, like he was hairy. Like
he said hairy like a garbage. I mean, this dude was like Bigfoot. I've heard some weird theories that was Esau a Nephilim.
Right. And so when you have the Bible going out of its way to list all of these various gemstones that the foundations of this city are made of, I'm like, maybe that is the propulsion mechanism for the city or something, like, you know what I mean? Like that gives it the ability to fly. I don't think that like God has the ability to do anything in this realm, but I think he uses the elements of the thing that he created, and so, maybe that's the method by which this thing is given levity.
Well, let's keep in mind something, that magic, so-called magic, exists. How do we know this? Because in the book of Enoch, we see that the fallen angels, the fallen Elohim, they taught people enchantments. They taught them magic, which means it really is. Now, we're not supposed to use it in the way that the fallen angels want us to, but there is some type there. again, it's difficult to talk about without, I don't want to sound like pagan and all the kind of stuff. But there is something to it, like crystals and things. Some of these crystals absorb. I have, like, next to my bed right now, I have certain of these crystals, and I have them there not because I'm praying to them, but because some of them absorb negative electromagnetic radiation. Yep. So I have it near me because I want to make sure that when I'm asleep, that all the negative EMF fields that are in all of our homes are not affecting me.
Right.
No, am I performing a magic ritual? No, I'm just using these crystals' natural ability to, absorb harmful radiation just to protect myself, because that's naturally what they can do. So
yeah, I think we've lost a lot of that. I
think we have, because
I've talked about it before, because it feels like Jesus was, in very many ways, it seems like everything, the same way like mankind became corrupted in our genealogy. I think everything, and it talks about that too, right? As far as like chimeric animals and even plant life and things like that. But I think that so much, even the sciences were so corrupted that it was like, we need to go back to like the basics almost, and right. So Jesus gives us that pathway through. We no longer need all this extra augmented stuff. But I don't know if God creates something and they invert it, it doesn't necessarily mean that thing is bad. Right. But it just right now it probably is, because our understanding of it is so far from the root that if we tried to use it, we would end up probably screwing ourselves over once again.
It's how you use something. Like if I take the crystal that's next to my bed and I just keep it on my nightstand to protect me, I'm not doing anything wrong. But if I take it and I pray to it and try to, do some kind of control someone's mind, well, that's different. It's what you do with it. And I think that God gave us everything on this earth when he said it was good. All of his creation was good. He gave it to us for us. Another idea of that is like herbs. He says, he gave herbs to heal us. And, we know that there are herbs that can actually heal you. But there are also people who use some of these herbs in ritualistic stuff. Some people burn sage to do other ritual cleansing or whatever.
Offerings.
Right. So you can misuse it, but that doesn't mean, just because you misuse something doesn't mean it's bad for you. I mean, a great example is cannabis. Mm-hmm. If you can abuse it, but it can also help if you use it the right way, which is so. But then man will screw it up and take a poppy seed and turn it into freaking heroin, which was never what it was intended to be. Exactly. But the poppy seed can actually relieve some pain. But if you refine it and screw with it, now it's something that's going to make you an addict, which is not what God intended.
Right. It's a beautiful thing where you have somebody back in the day who has an injury and then all of a sudden is granted relief from this plant. Mm-hmm. And then fast forward 2025 and you have Kensington Avenue in Philly where it's just a bunch of fentanyl zombies. And you go, well, probably using that the wrong way now.
Yeah, probably. Top, let's go back. It's one more verse I want to read. Then I'll give you my idea of what this is all about. And that is, okay, so we have all the stones. And then 21, the 12 gates were 12 pearls. And every several gate was one pearl. And the street was pure gold and it was transparent as glass. So what do we have here? We have a city that is walled. There's a walled city with 12 foundations, 12 gates. The gates are made of a pearl, a single pearl, which means that's a hell of a big ass oyster that they got this thing out of, because it's made. It says it's made of a single oyster, a single pearl, which is interesting because pearls only come from oysters. So I don't know, maybe there's some giant oysters hanging out somewhere that God used to make the city. So
it looks like it appears to me. I mean, look at this thing. It's like a portal of some type. Mm-hmm. Like if this was in front of you and this kind of crazy swirl was the gate to get in, I would call that a portal.
Interesting. I thought about it that way. That's interesting. So the size of the city. Let's talk about the size of it first before we get to the gates and the foundations. I think that's something really relevatory there. So it's basically you have all the furlongs, and unless you're a horse race, someone into a horse race, you probably don't know how big a furlong is. Yeah, basically, it's 15,000 miles.
Wow.
Jeez. I'm sorry. Excuse me. 1,500 miles all the way across. So if you take the foundation of it, the square, the bottom is going to be a square, definitely. It would take up over a third of the size of the United States.
Wow.
If you go to my Revelation series on faithbyreason.net, I actually have in the video, I have a picture of someone who outlines how much of the space of the United States the foundation of the New Jerusalem would take up. It would take up like all the East Coast, all the way from like the East Coast to roughly like Nebraska.
Damn.
It's going to be a huge, huge city. And so it's going to be 1,500 miles square. So all square and high. And that's one of the reasons why the Earth has to be bigger. Because if, let's say the Earth is a globe, it wouldn't fit, because it wouldn't fit on the curve. It wouldn't be flat. It would be too big to fit on the curve. Even if the Earth is a plane, it would be so high, it would be beyond the atmosphere. Now, granted, we probably won't be breathing the same way we do in our current bodies, but again, it would be beyond the atmosphere of our current Earth. So this new Earth is going to have to be bigger just to accommodate this one gigantic city that's, again, a little more than a third of the size of the United States. And interesting, some people say that we know that the city is going to be square. It's laid out for square, which means it's going to be a square on the bottom, but it doesn't necessarily say it's a square on the top. Some people think the New Jerusalem is a pyramid, because a pyramid can still be, still have the same height. It just comes to a point. I find that fascinating because of what we've learned about pyramids and how they are conductors of energy and how they're in top. You just talked about the portal aspect of it. So pyramids have a lot of supernatural energy about them. So it could be, it could be a square. So it's either going to be a cube or a pyramid. And, the Bible doesn't specifically say, but I find it intriguing. I find the possibility of it being a pyramid very intriguing. And I put both of those images on my video on faith.reason.net. So let's talk about the walls and the gates and the foundations. Here's the question. Why would the New Jerusalem need to have walls and gates?
Right.
If you look at a city back in that time, the walls were defensive. They were to keep out invaders. They were to keep, when the city was attacked, the walls are what protected you. I mean, you've seen, like, the old, if you looked at, any type of medieval media or Game of Thrones or anything like that, you saw that all these cities had these cities had walls around that keep the invaders out, and they had gates, and the gates were where people could come and go, but the gates were always barred. There were guards at the gates. Why would the New Jerusalem, if all evil has been punished and it's somewhere else it's separated from God, what do you need these walls for? Well, let's describe the walls. The walls are made of transparent gold. Gold, if the purer the gold is, the completely pure gold is actually transparent. You can see through it. So you have a wall around the city that you can see through. What's the point of that? Why does it have those gates? Why are they made of pearls? Why are the names of the 12 tribes of Israel on them? The foundation with all those stones. And those stones are, I think they represent different types of light, because when we talk about how God is light, it's not just bright white light. I think it's multicolored light. There's the heavens,
the whole spectrum.
Yeah, exactly, the whole spectrum. I think it's what these stones represent, as the entire spectrum of light. All light's going to be there, because white technically has white light has all the other lights in it. Once it becomes dimmer, as it were, then that's when you start seeing reds and blues and things like that. So, but the foundation has the names of the 12 apostles. What does this mean? I think I'll give my overview statement, then I'll explain what I mean. I think that the city and the way it's laid out represents the story of Jehovah. It's Jehovah's story in the city form. So every time you see the city, you're going to see Jehovah's story. What do I mean by that? What's the foundation? The foundation of the apostles. What do the apostles do? They spread the word of God. The word of God is Jesus, the Logos. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. So the foundation of Jehovah's story is Jesus, is the Word. You have the city there are gates to the city. Why are there gates? And the gates it says, we'll see later, it says the gates are always open, which means you can freely go in and out. So the foundation is Jesus, the Word. So, and in the city is where God will dwell. You can go into the city anytime you want, but you have to be intentional. The wall is around it because and it's transparent. So you can see into the city. So you can see. So everyone can see God right now. But if you want to enter into God's presence, you have to be intentional. You have to go through the gate. You can't just you can't just get to God any way you want. You can see him, but you have to get to him. You have to be intentional and go through the gate. What are the gates? The gates have the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. The 12 tribes of Israel, how salvation comes through the Jews. Paul says that specifically, salvation is of, or the origin of salvation is through the Jews, the 12 tribes of Israel. That's where Jesus was he was a Jew. So you get to God by going through the 12 tribes of Israel. That's what the Old Testament's all about. That's how you get to God is through the Jews. However, those gates are all made of pearl. What is the significance of that? Pearls come from oysters. Oysters are not kosher. That represents the Gentiles. So the gates have the names of the Jews on them, the Israelites on them, but they're for all the nations because they're made of pearl. So the foundation is Jesus. You can see through the transparency where that God is available. Everyone can see God. If you want to get to God, you have to be intentional. You have to go through the gate. The gate is the Old Testament, the prophecies about Jesus, but it's for the Gentiles. And so when you look at all of that, that is the entire story of God. God says, come to me. Everyone is invited, but you have to want it. It's based on the word of God. Salvation is through the testament of the Jews, but it's for all the Gentiles. So for eternity, we will see the story of God represented by this city.
It's funny.
That's
interesting
it's like because a lot of the time lately we've been talking about this idea that the nature of reality is fractal, and so you have like these stories of Christ in the stars, but you also have the stories of Christ in like the biology of mankind. And then that I've become pretty comfortable with the idea that if one side is all about rituals and ceremony, then maybe that's not necessarily a bad thing. Rituals and ceremony aren't a bad thing. It's just how you do things in a spiritual realm in this physical, planet that we inhabit. And so to me, it's like, it's all symbolism, and it's all, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but like there's a fractal nature even in that, right? Where it's like, now the story is being told on a physical scale, on a landmass with a city on it.
Right. It feels like you can do a pilgrimage to this city and walk around the gates. Like you can go in if you want, but you can walk around the gates and see through these walls as if they were like a TV or projector of some kind. Like, I want to know what happened here. Like what happened and it's just like keep walking and you'll see this whole story. Otherwise, God will have to answer this question billions and billions of times. Like,
well, I love that too, because it's like we are living in a story. We are living in a script, right? And then to see the manifestation of that in a physical way, in
how
the
it
sky,
actually happened.
Right.
Yeah.
It's going to be it's an eternal memorial. It's like, when you go to Washington D.C. and you see all these statues and all these kind of it's that's what it is, like the Washington Monument, which that's a bad example because that's an obelisk, but it's just when you go to the New Jerusalem, you say, yep, this is God's story. This is what He was doing from the beginning up till now, and he finally gets what he wants. Now in the city, it's going to be all the rooms. Like when you go to the Gospel of John, chapter 14. It says, let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions, or many rooms. We're each going to have a room in the New Jerusalem. That's one of the reasons why it's so big. Now, we won't always live there, but that's where we'll come. We'll probably come there for, as you were saying, Raven, for ceremonial reasons. We'll probably come to the city because, again, that's where God's throne is. We'll come there. We'll stay in our particular room in there. And then we'll probably go back out to the rest of the earth. To our plot of land there or elsewhere. And that's where we're going to get into my crazy theory next week. So we'll come and go as we please, and we'll have a special place for it. And I think that all the bricks in that walls, in those walls, I think each one of them is going to have one of our names on it, because we saw earlier in the book of Revelation, it says that, I think it was to the church at Philadelphia, or maybe Sardis, forgive me, but our names are written on a stone. And I think, what if those stones are the stones that make up the wall of this massive city? So each one of us has our name on a stone.
I like that. It's got a kind of a beautiful tinge to it.
Yeah, it does. So let's keep going. I think we can get through it. So and the gate should not be shut at all by day, and there should be no night there. So that's interesting. As I said, the gates won't be shut. So which gets, well, why are the gates? Again, it's not for defensive reasons. It's just to show that this is Jehovah's story. The gate to get to God is never closed at this point. Everyone's welcome. You just have to be intentional to get to him. You have to go through the Old Testament Jews, and then also obviously the New Testament. And there should be no night there. So the question is there no night at all on the whole earth, or is there just no night in the New Jerusalem? Not sure. Either way, it's pretty cool. If there's no night at all, which makes sense, because if God will dwell there and God is light, and and there's no darkness in him, then there can never be any darkness. There'll never be any night. Because how do we measure night? We measure it by the sun going down and coming back or around or whatever, however you want to see it. But it says there will be there won't be a sun there.
That's
there will be
interesting, 'cause
no
a lot
more
of
sun.
people look at the moon as if it's actually a negative thing, right? Like, you know, there's
You mean no
number
more night?
one, a never-ending amount of theories about the nature of the moon and what it actually is, some sort of artificial satellite that these things watch us from, allegedly, but also that the light is different that comes off the moon. I've heard people
I've heard that
describe
as
it as
well.
like putrid and decaying. It's like a dead light.
Yes,
Um,
it's like a cold light.
Yeah, so it seems that there's actually like a negative connotation with that. So if that actually is a negative thing, then to have that be removed would make sense.
Well, and the reason that we have night is for recovery.
And
You
we
know,
won't
night
need that.
tells our bodies and the bodies of animals to sleep so that we can repair. We're going to have new bodies that won't need the same kind of reparation, of repairing, of reparation. So there won't be any need for night. So there'll be no sun, no moon. There won't be needed. We won't need because God's going to be our light. So of course, the sun's beneficial. Vitamin D and all the other beneficial things of the sun, and the moon, although like I said, has a negative connotation. It also controls the tides. But hey, we'll be in the oceans. Well, who cares about?
Yeah, that's a good point too. We won't be in the oceans.
And again, we won't need to have that recovery period because we'll be in these higher dimensional bodies, and God will be the light.
The moon representing like the divine feminine, which is like it links into Lilith, right? They call Lilith in the Bible, it seems, when they describe the night monster, that they're actually talking about something akin to Lilith. And so
I'm going to do an episode on that as a bonus episode of my Patreons on Lilith when we get to the Adam and Eve portion of Genesis. But yeah, go ahead.
Can you address this? So this guy is saying we're reading the Bible, but we're not reading it as like a metaphorical translation. We're reading it as what it actually says. So this guy's disagreeing. He says no night equals no darkness. Darkness means death, so it means eternal life.
It can mean multiple. It can mean more than one thing. It also night can mean I don't think night means death, because there was day and night before original sin, and there was no death, no physical mortal death before original sin.
Oh, that's interesting.
So you can use night as a symbol of it, but we don't die at night. I think we replenish at
Why
night.
would you use night as a symbol of death when they do mention death here? It's like,
yeah. I don't know. I'm just saying I don't want to completely dismiss what the listener was saying, but I don't see. I don't think that you can see, because sometimes night is spoken of negatively in the Bible. So there may be a point there, but I think if that is a point of it, I think it's a minor point. I think the biggest point is that there'll be no need for restoration, and that there will be no time where we are not in the light of God and not in the presence of God. So I mean, darkness, again, the people who are going to be away, separated from God for eternity, they'll be in eternal darkness. So in that sense, you can't say darkness can be a symbol of eternal death. I don't think that night necessarily means death, but I think darkness can. And since night is dark, to a degree, the moon is still out, so there is some light. But the people who are going to be separated are going to be in darkness with no light whatsoever, not even the light of a moon and stars.
A quick aside, in Mr. Popo's torture chamber, it's always white. It's always bright white. There is no nighttime. It's just vast arrays of white. The landscape is white.
Well, I think it's torture because sleep deprivation is torture for us right now. If you were in, like, what was it, Guantanamo Bay, one of the things they would do is they would put the people in these rooms that were fluorescent lights all the time. They could not sleep, and that messes you up, because without REM sleep and deep sleep, you don't recover. So it's torture.
I wonder what Mr. Popo knew. What do you know? What are your secrets, Mr. Popo? Okay, let's
all right.
continue.
So, and they will bring the glory and honor of the nations into it. Wait, and I'll get back to that. And there shall in no wise be anything that defiles or works abomination or makes a lie, but only they that are written in the Lamb's Book of Life. Again, just John reiterating for like the third time that nothing evil is going to be there, and that only those who are believers will be in this realm. So bring the glory and honor of nations into it. Well, that means that they're going to be nations. in on this new earth. Interesting.
And that also there's still some sort of room because it talks about there not being evil in the city. And
But
that's
there won't be
interesting.
evil anywhere, but there will be nations. And so there will be people who, and what nations are, I guess they're just going to be gatherings of people who have a singular purpose. But they're not going to be, I think this is part of the reward that certain believers are going to get, that they're going to be over some. I think they're going to have that in the millennial reign, but it looks like they're also going to be people who are going to have certain authority in the kings of the earth. Yeah, so they're going to be people who have authority in the New Jerusalem, and they're going to be people who have earned it. I'm sure, like, the disciples will be among them, some of the other great men and women of God, and probably people we've never heard of, who have done great things in the name of God. They're going to be rewarded by leading. So basically what they're going to be doing, these kings are going to be leading. They're not going to be dominating. Don't think of them as the politicians and kings that we have to this day who dominate others. The definition of a leader, and I think we talked about this, maybe we talked about this one time when we had John Lenhart on, but the definition of a leader is someone who facilitates the purpose and progress of others. A leader is not about him or herself. A leader is about others. So these leaders, these kings, their job is not going to be, hey, bring me glory, I'm such a great king. They're going to be saying, no, how can I help you grow? I grew so much, when I was alive, that I want to help others grow. I want to help, people who did not get as much knowledge as I did when I was on earth. I want to lead a group, and I'm going to help them grow. So I think that's what these kings, these leaders are going to be. They're going to be nations. Maybe these nations are at different levels. Advanced ones who only need a certain amount of teaching, and maybe there's some who are really young, just made up of really young Christians. Maybe babies who were aborted. Maybe people who became Christians on their deathbed who don't know very much. So they're going to need a different type of leader who's going to just break everything down to them. And so that nation will just be of those. But if you're more advanced, you don't need to be in that nation. You need to be in a nation that's going to give you different types of information and different types of growth opportunities. So that's a possibility for what these different nations are going to be like. Again, speculation. I don't know for sure, but this is just, a thought. But it could be, I can be completely wrong.
Well, that's a lot of what, there was a time when I kind of, I guess in a childlike outlook would have assumed like, oh, when you die, you suddenly know there's no more secrets. You know everything. You go and then God's like, here you go. Here's all this stuff you've been worrying about. But then even just given actual near-death experiences, it's like people come back, they've gleaned some sort of information. They certainly don't have a handle on everything. And it wasn't like, you don't get stories where it's like, and I knew everything. Everything made sense, and all the mysteries were unlocked. It's like, and that I kind of appreciate that, because whatever comes next is a lot longer than whatever we're doing here. So the idea that we just graduate to that and then know everything, I would very much like the learning to continue.
Yeah, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. That was one of the myths, that we're just going to get this download of information and we're suddenly going to know everything. There's nothing biblical about that. In fact, I could argue that there's a part of the Bible that says the opposite, and that is Revelation chapter 1, verse 1, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave to him. Right. God, when Jesus ascended to heaven, now granted, before this, when he was, in eternity past, he was with God, and he knew everything, but he voluntarily gave that up to become a human being. So the baby Jesus didn't know, all the secrets of the universe. It says very clearly that he grew, that Jesus, as he grew into adulthood, he grew in knowledge and grace and favor with God and men. So I mean that Jesus was learning stuff. God was teaching him stuff. But in his 33 years, God didn't have time to teach him everything. So when he gets to heaven, God has to reveal stuff back to him that he already knew before. So what that means so if Jesus has to go to heaven and he learned stuff from God, you think we're not gonna?
Right.
Man, the first 30 years of his life is just kind of a blank page,
Well, the first 3 years he was learning. God was teaching him all this stuff. He was teaching him a bunch of stuff that he, in those last 3 years of his ministry, that's when he was teaching, the Beatitudes and the parables and all this kind of. He was telling everyone what God had taught him to that point. But keep in mind, there was, thousands, many thousands of years of information, plus whatever was going on before creation that God had to give him back. So I think we're going to learn, and we'll have eternity to learn and grow. And I think we have time to get into a little bit the first half of chapter 22, because that also pertains to what's going on in New Jerusalem. So Tup, you want to pull that up? Chapter 22. Yep. Did we get to the end of 21?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. And he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God and of the Lamb. And in the midst of the street, and on either side of the river, there was a tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruits that yielded her fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. Interesting. And there will be no more curse, but the throne of God and the Lamb shall be in it, and his servants shall serve him. And they will see his face, and his name will be on their foreheads. And again, there will be no night there, no need for candle, nor neither light of the sun, for the Lord gives them light. John's reiterating again, verse 6, and he says to me, these things are faithful and true. The Lord God of the holy prophets and his angels showed these things to his servant. So John's about to wrap it up. So I want to talk about these first 4 verses. There's a river, pure river of the water of life from the throne of God. That throne will be in the New Jerusalem. And there will be the tree of life. What is the tree of life and the river of life there for? Well, it says that in the end of verse 2, that these leaves of the trees for the healing of the nations. So there's going to be healing. Why would there need to be healing? Because there will be damage. What kind of damage? As we grow, there's going to be mistakes. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. We're going to be sinless. We're not going to make sin, because sin is intentionally doing what you know is wrong. A mistake is being wrong innocently. We can make mistakes, and we'll heal from them because we're going to be growing and learning. And as we grow and learn, there's going to be some painful aspects of it. Anytime you grow, there's some pain involved, but it's going to be healed by the trees of these nations. I'm sorry, by the leaves of these trees, and they're going to heal the nations. And so, if my hypothesis is correct that these nations are going to be areas where people are learning and growing, well, those nations are going to need to be some healing, because there may be some disagreements. There may be, some pain of learning, and those leaves are there to heal them. And I think that might be more symbolic than physical. It may not be people rubbing leaves on us per se, but I think it could be literal, and I tend to default to the literal, but this could also be symbolic, allegorical of how these leaves, when you come to the New Jerusalem, you're going to get this healing of any of the pain you're going through as you grow. And the tree of life is going to be there to freely eat of it. And remember, that tree of life was in the Garden of Eden. Everyone focuses on the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, but the tree of life is there, and it also physically heals. So we're going to have physical bodies. So they're resurrection bodies. But what if I don't know, maybe we'll do damage. Maybe we'll fall off some and hurt our arm. I don't know.
It's interesting that it goes
the
on
tree of life
to,
you're going to repair.
It
Well, it
actually
seems
states like, oh, there's going to be 12 fruits, and that every month you're going to be able to pick these fruits. That's interesting.
That's
It's
time.
also, you're saying, so there's 12 fruits for there's 12 for each of the nations, which are those nations are going to be, I assume, the tribes of Israel. Like that's like how these nations would be divided, right?
I don't know. It could be, but it's not specific there. It could be it could be more. It could be like a ton of nations. I mean, it's gonna be a lot of land space, and I don't know. These nations are going to be organized under a leader. And as I said previously, I think these leaders are going to be the ones that are shepherding people, these groups, based on their needs. So there may be more than 12. There may be hundreds, thousands of them.
Yeah, because I'm just stuck on and the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations, and there were 12 manner of the leaves of the tree were for
right. Yeah, there are 12
manner
fruits.
Fruit. Gotcha.
Yeah, there are 12 types of fruits. That doesn't mean there's just 12 nations.
Right.
And I think that we're still going to be in a 12-month. The way we're going to measure time in this sequence is still going to be some form of a 12-month cycle.
I'm not saying that this is the connection at all, but it does bring to mind this idea that, like, in the Amazon, they use a combination of indigenous plant leaves in order to produce ayahuasca, which I wouldn't recommend doing it, but it's a healing process for them, right? And now we in the West are like utilizing things like ayahuasca trips and such to heal people of like psychological issues, PTSD, depression, anxiety, and I just wonder, it's like when you hear the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations, in what way would they be utilized? I don't know. And I don't know if that's such a stretch just because of that whole fractal nature again, right? It's like these plants and fruits and such are here for us to use one way or another. We could use them badly, and then we can go to a realm and we can communicate with disembodied spirits that wish us ill will. But the point of the fact of the matter is, we can do this and go to another realm, in the form of ayahuasca. So I just wonder if it's maybe something like that.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, we really don't know. And I think that, the question might be, why would God give us these images and not tell us exactly what they mean? I think it's for the same reason he doesn't tell us a lot about angels, the Elohim, because we would screw it up. We would worship them. In the Bible proper, we were only given the names of 2 angels, Michael and Gabriel. Now, there are a few more that are named in the book of Enoch, but there are countless angels. They all have names. Why we only know 2 of them? Because God knows that we'll worship them, because we've done it in the past. God's like, the more information I give you, the more opportunity you're going to screw it up.
Seems that
people
way.
would
So
be
I'm going to be
worshiping this
very,
tree.
I'm going to be very judicious in what I tell you, because you're going to corrupt it. So I think that how are the leaves going to be used? I don't know. I think if God said, you're going to take this leaf and make a poultice out of it, and you're going to drink it. Oh, really? Let's do that with the leaf we find now. Then we're going to end up with, like you said, with ayahuasca and heroin and stuff like that, because he knows that we are going to take anything that's good and we're going to corrupt it.
Right.
And also remember, we're in spiritual warfare right now. And there's counterintelligence happening.
Yes.
And what if the evil angels know too much about what the New Jerusalem's going to be like, and they use that to their advantage and they corrupt that? So I think God has to be very judicious in what he says, because again, we don't know a lot about heaven. We don't know a lot about the New Jerusalem. And I think that's not because God wants to hide it from us, but because he knows that the more, it's like I've got, I have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old. There's certain things I'm not going to tell them right now.
Right.
Because, they're not ready for it. I'm not going to tell them about sex. I mean, my 10-year-old, in a couple of years, I'm going to have to start talking to him about it. But I'm not going to tell my 8-year-old, hey, here's when a man and a woman want to get together, they take off their clothes, they do it. I'm not going to, it's not that it's a bad thing. I mean, in the right context, sex is a beautiful thing, but he ain't ready to hear it. And if he hears it from me right now, it's going to mess him up. He shouldn't be seeing pornography right now. He shouldn't be seeing a naked woman right now, because it's going to screw him up. So I think that's the same thing with God. God knows right now we are children. We cannot, there's information we cannot handle. So we can only hint at it. So I can just tell my son that, one day you're going to find the right woman and you're going to have a beautiful life together. And that's all I can tell him right now. I can't tell him the mechanics of everything that's going to go on with it. So I think we have to take that tact.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it has to do with our own filter that it passes through. You know what I mean? Because I was just thinking about that as you were saying that. I'm like, if I told that to my son who's 9, it would just pass through the wrong filter entirely, and he would misinterpret every aspect of it, every inch along the way.
I'll tell you a personal story, because this is something that John Linhart and I, we're working on for maybe later next year. We want to come up with some courses to help people with, certain mental health struggles that we have. And one of them is pornography for men. I mean, we all know it's a horror. It's tough. And I think that and John helped me. We've all been exposed to it, and we've all had the issues, and some of the ways that John and his team have come up with have really helped a lot of men, because it's mostly a man thing. Women do it to a degree, but it's mostly a man thing. Yeah. But my story that I have is that the first time I was exposed to it was by accident when I was 8 years old. There was a rainstorm, and I was living with my grandmother at the time. There was a rainstorm, and it was a lot of wind. It blew a bunch of stuff out, from everywhere. And my grandmother tells me, go out and rake up the leaves, clean up our yard. So I'll go out there, and one of the things that had blown away into our yard was a page from Hustler magazine.
Wow.
Like, what's this?
Yeah, and I see this. I'm like, Hustler. They don't. Hustler's like the gynecological view. So I look down, I see this, I see something I'd never seen before. And I was like, whoa, what is this? And again, even at 8 years old, it was, something inside me said, this is something. I did I'm 8, I know what to do. But I mean, I can right now, I can see that image in my head, because it was such an indelible imprint on my 8-year-old psyche. Yeah. That's how strong this is. And of course, it led to the next thing. So the next thing my friends are bringing their father's Playboys to the bathroom. We look at them, and then you go to the next stage where you get in high school, and you get I'm older than you guys. It was videotapes and CDs back then. And then you keep going to the point where now porn is so easy to get. It's nuts.
It's a disaster.
It's a disaster. I mean, you could just
I have
like you had to work to get porn back when I was young. Now you can just get a million hours of it literally for free.
Yeah, that's why like my son is 9. He doesn't have internet access at all. And I'm realizing, like, I don't know when I was exposed to a lot of things like way too early. And every once in a while I look at him and I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm like beating some sort of record here. Like this kid's not been exposed to anything yet. You know, it's not like he doesn't have if he does, I almost feel like I'd have seen a change in him. Because if it happens, it's got to happen on his friend's time or something.
They're looking
there's just something you would detect just a little bit, and I'm like, no, he's still running around, just head in the clouds, innocent as ever, you know. And it's like,
I love that. My son, when we're watching a TV movie or something, and the man and woman kiss, he covers his eyes. I'm like,
I'll do that. I cover his eyes. I don't let him see anything like that, you know.
He covers his own eyes. My youngest, he's like, oh, I don't want to see that. That's gross. I'm like, yes, keep it gross for as long as
good, super gross, disgusting. Don't worry about that at all.
Hey,
Dude.
Cooties.
We're doing something irreparable to the kids, and it's, you know, it's not good. It's
Merkel was saying on his show that someone had told him that he was like a higher up exec in the porn industry, and he was like, some of these girls that are doing this stuff aren't even people, they're like literal succubus demons, and every time you do this, you like offering a sacrifice to them. And I'm like, dude, I was like, I kind of believe it. It feels that way.
There's certainly
Sometimes
a spiritual exchange. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Wow, that's deep.
So what we're saying is like, watch the homemade stuff. If you don't do that, it's probably demons too, dog.
You know, I the same thing happened to me though. Somebody in the chat said we've all found. I think it might have been Lucas. Said we've all found a bag of magazines in the woods and stuff. It's like I found it we were dumpster diving as kids because we found out that 7-Eleven threw out all their Game Informer, like their video game magazines. They just chuck them in the dumpster when they're done. So, you know, somebody told us that, and we went, and sure enough, all the magazines were in the dumpster, but all the magazines were in the dumpster. And, you know, not good. It's a disaster exposing children to those sorts of things.
When I moved in with when I was 13, I moved in with my mom and my stepdad. And, you know, I was cleaning out the garage. I don't know why this happens when I'm cleaning stuff, but then I run into my stepdad's stash of
there it
magazines.
goes. Yep.
Innocently, I wasn't looking. I was trying to clean out the garage, and there's his stash. And I'm like, oh well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the next thing you know, you're sitting there. I remember pulling those out of and they're just we spread them all out on the pavement. It's just me and a bunch of like a gang of 10-year-olds just staring at this shit on the pavement. Well, would you look at that? Would you look at that? Like cars are driving by. We're all just staring at it on the floor. Not good.
To our minds. It's addictive.
Yeah.
I mean, it tempted the freaking angels.
Right.
I mean, they came down, and it's the power of the vajayjay.
Yep. Wow. That's it. You know, try to keep your kids from it as long as you possibly can. It's almost an uphill battle for sure.
It's such a weird thing because when you do look at it objectively, which I have done a couple of times now, I'm like, this thing is kind of goofy.
Yeah.
I remember in my my bachelor party, we went to New Orleans, which is one of my favorite cities. I just love the food and the culture of New Orleans, and that's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to hang out with my buddies and just eat good food, drink, tie one on with some, get some Sazeracs and whatever, and just enjoy the culture. But of course, on the last night, they're like, let's go to a strip club. I'm like, I don't want to do that, guys.
I'm not I've
never been to it. I go, and I went, and they were doing their thing. They were having a good time. I'm looking at them, and I did something that they don't do. I look these women in the eye. I just looked at them. And when I did that, I'm like, you know what? These women don't want to be here.
Yeah, you could tell.
I can look in your eye and tell you don't want to be here. You're not happy.
Yeah.
You're just doing this. You're doing it for the money, which I get.
It's a horrifying exchange.
Yeah.
On all levels.
And it was such a turnoff. And I've not been to one since, because it's just like, this is sad. It really is. These women, no little girl grows up saying, you know what I want to do when I grow up? I want to, take off my clothes and dance in front of a bunch of leering.
Yeah, but feminism wants to convince you that that's empowering. Shout out to Smurfy. I also have never been in a strip club. I just couldn't imagine, because it's just the fact of the matter of paying somebody to pretend they like you.
Right.
It's
pathetic on both sides. It's sad for the women. It's pathetic for the men. The men who are pathetic.
Being in a strip club is like watching Michael Jordan in Space Jam, like at the end where they're like, "You're gonna be in the chains and you're gonna be playing basketball forever." That's exactly what it is,
Yeah.
man. Very
Yeah.
sad. You don't
I
wanna
don't
see 'em
even like
that.
you know when I go to when I go to a restaurant and the server is like overly nice to me. I'm like, you're only doing this because you want
want
to
a
tip, and you know you appreciate the nice. So I can't do that. Don't pretend to be. You know, I would much rather you not have to pretend to like somebody. That's not a good thing. And then of course, yeah, I just so look. I have to address this because Ed is like looking at
Okay.
this. They keep calling me master, and I just want to say, and I keep having to say it. These people don't actually respect me. They just know that one day somebody's gonna look at that and go like, "What is this guy doing?" And like, yeah, to their credit, it's gonna be very
They're
funny
gonna look
when
at
people
this
think that I'm a cult leader.
flamboyantly dressed straight man with like a whole
Heavily
bunch of
mustached.
followers. Like, this is a
Homosexual
cult.
man.
They're calling him masters.
Putting the ball
Weird.
in your mouth with the we're going.
There you go.
I think it's time to wrap it
Master,
up.
go. It's not
Yeah.
good. It's not good.
Can
It's
we-
gonna 100% bite me in the ass.
Can we just discuss this last one, verse 4
Yeah,
here
sure.
real quick,
Yeah,
or
uh-huh.
3 and 4?
Oh yeah. You're right.
That's
I missed
interesting.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a
This was
dream
some-
last night, Ed, and this made me think
Oh,
about it.
yeah.
Number 4, where it says his name shall be on their foreheads. I had a dream where I was like having a dialogue, and I could almost see like a man's face, and then I woke up because somebody touched my forehead. And when I woke up, there was nothing there, but in my mind, I was like, I was just having a conversation with God, and that's literally the end of the entire experience. But that was like what was lingering in my head was I was talking to God, and then I woke up because something touched me on my forehead. But there was I can like even the spot that I'm touching, it's like, you know, you can remember it was right there. Very strange. But I just saw that, right? It says, and they shall see his face, and his name shall be in their foreheads. On or in?
In and that's specific. So let me talk about both halves of this verse. So that you'll see his face. What that means is that we will be able to experience the full presence of God. We'll be
That's
able
interesting.
to see him as he is, because remember, we may have talked about this before, like when Moses asked to see God, and God's like, no man can see me and live, because you know he's at pure light, that pure energy. But you know, Moses could see the back. God hid him in a cliff and a cleft of a mountain, and he could see him pass by. We'll be able to see him full on because we will occupy the same space. We will be like him in the sense that we will be able to actually see his face. And that doesn't necessarily mean that he has a eyes, nose, mouth. Maybe. But what I'm thinking is we will be able to see his full countenance. We'll be able to fully experience him. He won't be holding anything back from us for our safety. We'll be able to fully experience God. And I think that's going to be unbelievable, because you know you have the source of all information, the eternal light. It's beyond our comprehension, but we'll be able to comprehend him, and our name will be in their foreheads. What that harkens back to is the Shema, which is the hero Israel, the Lord your God is one, and you will worship. That's Shema. That's what all Jews are supposed to recite, and it says you're supposed to put the Shema, which is it was basically the first of the 10 commandments. You put it on your doorpost, and you also have it in your right hand and in your forehead. Now that doesn't mean that the ancient Israelites were walking around with this written on their forehead. It was in their foreheads. It was in their mind. In your right hand. Your right hand is your action. Your forehead is your mind. So when it says keep my law, keep the Shema in your right hand and in your forehead, which is, it vividly says that in Leviticus and in Deuteronomy. It's saying that keep the word of God, the presence of God in your mind and in your right hand. And so it means your actions should be all about God and your mind should be focused on God. So
That's
the
interesting
name of
when
God,
it comes to the mark of the beast, right? Because it's like instead you're putting the
Covering
beast's
that.
name there.
right? Exactly. Even though I think the mark of the beast will be physical, I think it also will be remember, because that's all Satan does. He mimics God.
Right.
So he's mimicking it in that same way. That's why the mark will be in the right hand and in their forehead. So I think it will be worshiping. That's what you do with your head. But I also think it's going to be a physical mark that's going to, make changes to you.
This calls to the idea of the pineal gland too. Like, you know how the new age
Yeah.
people will be like enlightenment, this like like
Third eye sort of
glows.
situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear about that a lot, and I'm still, I haven't studied it, but people say pineal gland's calcified. Like, why does it have so much bloody calcium in it? I don't
Like
know.
The
so
fluoride.
it produces dimethyltryptamine, right, which is responsible for these like really wild experiences where you can seemingly realm shift depending on if you smoke it. But yeah, I mean, what's interesting about it is that even in it, so it does have the makeup of an eye. Like the gland is got some anatomy about it that is close to an eye. Like in lizards, it actually has a retina and a lens. And I used to own a bearded dragon. You could look between their eyes on the top of their head, and you could see a small foggy lens.
Really?
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. So this thing is very much like an eye in its nature. I find that fascinating. I wonder if that has anything to do with it.
It just might. I mean, I need to do some study on the pineal gland because I've kind of shied away from it because it seems so occulty. But again, like we've been saying before, a lot of these things are just corrupted forms of good things. So if it's in your body, it's good. It's for you. But maybe they've corrupted it. Not maybe, they've definitely corrupted it. So, and again, I have to admit that, you know, growing up, I shied away from anything that reeked of the occult because I did not want to be a part of it. But but as I've grown, I've have to come to the realization that everything that God made, he made good. He made it for our benefit. But it can be corrupted by evil. And we need to separate the corruption from the truth and from the reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
So I'm not going to open my pineal gland in order to, you know, do whatever and go into spiritual planes and do things I'm not supposed to do. But I need to know where that line of demarcation is so I don't cross over it.
Yeah. I started my whole journey like looking at the occult and everything. And what's clear to me is like there's definitely something there. It's not like bullshit theories and practices that don't yield any results. Like there seems to be something really spiritual about us. It just sucks because Christianity, and maybe for a good reason, I'm not saying that they were wrong in this, but it's like it has stepped back away from those things so dramatically. And I think it's wise to focus on Christ, but I don't think it's wise to say that these things are not real, because then what happens if somebody discovers that they are? Well, then they feel as though they've been lied to.
Right.
And that's
It's
problematic.
the same reason you don't show your kid porn when you're explaining the birds and the bees, right? It's kind of
Yes.
like a little too much. You'll
That's a great
understand
analogy.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. I think if you're a younger Christian, if you're just getting into it, I think you should stay as far away from that as possible. But I think once you've grown, I think that may be a little safer for you to go deeper into some of these areas. And which again, that's what Faith by Reason. Faith by Reason is not for like baby Christians. It's for, you know, NephilimDeathSquad is not for baby Christians. It's for people who want to go deeper and are mature enough for it. Because if you're not mature enough for it, I think Paul said this himself. Paul said, "Don't be a stumbling block to younger Christians."
Mhm.
So, you know, it's remember it was the part about eating meat sacrificed to idols. And Paul said, if you're a mature Christian, yeah, go ahead and eat it, because you know you can eat the meat because you know it's just meat. But if you're a young Christian, don't stay away from that. Don't eat that meat because you may be leading them astray. Because that young Christian might say, well, I guess it's okay to do this idol worship because this mature Christian is doing it.
Yeah,
So,
I would never let you like drive a car without first understanding all the ways in which a car accident can happen and
Right.
how to be safe inside the car, right?
Well,
So yeah,
Ed,
it's kind of like that.
We're running up on time that we got to get out
Yeah.
of here. Definitely.
Okay.
Do, but I wanted to ask you this because now that we're on this, just before you popped on the stream, I was talking to Raven and I said, should we be like not making this show not about who we are, but should we be tailoring it more toward the average church going Christian? Because is this show for somebody who already is in their faith and is like possibly having more questions about it? But also I understand sometimes we say some things, like especially when it's just me and David, we go off the rails and I can't help it. So I'm like, should we tone that back? And we decided, we're like, nah, I don't care. Like, listen, this is who we are. And if we do it any other way, it's going to be bad. But
No,
then,
you need to be
Like, you know what, Top?
is this show necessarily for people who are in church that are, or because there's a lot of people that are like, I'm not in church and I had no real spirituality, but like this helped me kind of make heads and tails. And it's like it's a jumping on point, but it's a hard one, right? Because we're talking about occult stuff and you could
Well,
get
you know what?
real mixed
Before
up.
Ed answers that, I just want to say, like, when I make content, I don't do this on purpose, but it just so turns out that I make content for me. In other words, like, I am that person who is told that these things aren't valid, occult things. And the more I'm looking at them, the more I'm like, no, there's something here. And I don't have any answers for it from a Christian source. And now I get to make content like that from that perspective. And so I recognize that if I were to have stumbled upon this show when I was a kid, I never did anything. I never was a practicing occultist or anything like that. And I was never an atheist either. But this would have been a lifeline to me.
Mhm. So here's two answers. One is Faith by Reason. I started. It's for more mature Christians. And I did it specifically because, like you just said, Raven, it was. I made it for me, for people who are on my journey, because I figured there had to be. There are lots of stuff that's for younger Christians. I think most stuff out there is for Christians who are only at a certain level, but there's a dearth of information, not very much for Christians who want to go deeper. So I did make it for that. That said, there are two things that I'm doing right now that will be for younger Christians. I think the Bible study, for one. I think if you're mature or young, the fact that we're going into this with no preconceived notions in my Patreon Bible study, that can be for younger Christians. And the Q&A thing that I'm going to start, that I want us to do with John pretty soon, is going to be where people just ask whatever question you have. It can be a complex question or a basic question. I'm not going to say, oh, that's I don't. Why was Jesus born of a virgin? That's a basic question. I'm not going to shun that. It's a good question that a young Christian might have. And I'll be happy to answer any of those questions, through the show that we'll be doing in the future, as well as, what's on my Patreon right now. But I don't dumb it down. I really don't. And that's why I want the Q&A for people who are like, whoa, this is a little too much. Can you bring it down? That's when I'll maybe bring it down a little bit more. But my audience, the audience that I'm cultivating, the niche, is for Christians who have a level of maturity and they want to keep going beyond what they're getting maybe from their church. Because if you go to a big church, they have to service a lot of people. And, the stuff we talk about is maybe only going to appeal to maybe 10% of that church necessarily.
Right. And it's a lot of unpacking about the minutia of strange things to people. And it doesn't become conducive to a larger audience. But I think, like, at the end of the day, I have to focus on pursuing the truth, and I can't focus on passing it through a filter. Like, this isn't a difficult show for me to do, because all it requires is, like, probably shouldn't swear that much or get too obtuse. And that, honestly, I'm not really like that. My Twitter profile is inflammatory, but that's because of the nature of Twitter. In my own, expression, I'm not really like that. And so if I had to start then passing it through a filter, it would affect the message, and I'm only in it for the truth. That's all I'm looking for. And so I think that's what makes this thing go, is other people who are also looking for the truth and really aren't concerned with whether or not I'm Joel Osteening it up and passing it through one thing while clearly being something else.
Yeesh.
Yeah. So
if this is steak, Joel Osteen is like breast milk.
Yes. Well, careful. There's some people that are into that. Shout out Toad.
Shout
okay.
out my co-host too.
Okay. Wrap it up.
We got to bring it in for a landing. We got another show in 5 minutes. So Ed, one more time, let the audience know where they can find you.
Next week, what are we doing next week?
Yes, that's right.
God willing.
Next week, we're going to talk about more detail about what we'll be doing in the New Jerusalem. My opinions, that's when I get into my crazy wild theory that may or may not be even remotely true, but it's speculation, and we're going to do that. And then following that, I'll do just a conclusion episode where I just bring everything together from chapter 1 to chapter 22, and we'll talk through it.
Okay, perfect. And speaking of Joel Osteen, where can they find you, Ed?
Yeah.
What the hell, man? That's crazy looking.
faithbyreason.net is my main channel. This is my Patreon, which I just launched, and I'd love for you guys to be a part of it. At the tier 1 level, you get bonus content, you get your Q&As answered, you get everything before anyone else. It's going to be on Patreon for weeks or maybe even months, depending on it, before I release to the general public. And at the blue tier, you're part of that Bible study we call the Jehovah Story Book Club, where we read the Bible like a novel that you've never read before. We take it from the supernatural point of view. We go through the entire Bible in 1 year, and you have access to resources with summaries and videos and deep dives and commentary that you have access to that. And yeah, it's been life-changing for a lot of people. Folks have been asking me for it. I've been doing it for about 5 years now, and this is the first time I'm opening it up to people outside of the private group that I've been doing it with. So I'd love for you guys to come aboard and be a part of it. I promise you it's going to change your relationship with God. I promise you that. There's stuff here that you will not hear anyplace else, because I've never heard it anyplace else.
I'm excited, man. I've been looking for a good Bible study, and I don't want to go and do one with people I'm not familiar with. I'd rather hang with friends of the show. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm definitely going to be there. I hope a lot of the people listening and watching will join us.
Yeah.
I'm going to be putting this on. I'm going to have to put this in the description so it's clickable, because I didn't add that to this. But yeah, it'll be there when you guys rewatch it on audio or whatever Go there, scroll down, and it'll be a hyperlink. You could just click it. I know you guys are lazy. Just press it.
That's all you got to do. That's all you got to do. I look forward to hanging out with you guys and doing a little Bible study February 16th.
All right, let's wrap it up because I got to pee. So,
Okay.
guys,
All right.
I got to go.
Thank you again. We'll see you next week. Don't forget to obey, submit, and comply. Goodbye.
The greatest hypnotist on planet Earth is a oblong box in the corner of the room. It is constantly telling us what to believe is real.
If you can persuade them that what they see with their eyes is what there is to see, you can't. Because they'll laugh in the face of an explanation that portrays the bigger picture of what's happening. And they have.